Dhyana in Hinduism, Buddhism, Jainism means contemplation and meditation, though the technical context is different. Dhyana is taken up in yoga exercises, and leads to Samadhi and self-knowledge. The various concepts of dhyana and its practice originated in the Vedic era, developed further in the Buddhist, Hindu and Jain traditions, partly independently, partly influencing each other, and have been influential within the diverse traditions of Hinduism. It is, in Hinduism, a part of a self-directed awareness and unifying yoga process by which the yogi realizes self, one's relationship with other living beings, and ultimate reality. The term jhana appears in Arañaka and Brahmana layers of the Vedas but with unclear meaning, while in the early Upanishads it appears in the sense of contemplation, meditation, and an important part of self-knowledge process. It is described in numerous Upanishads of Hinduism, and in Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, a key text of the Yoga school of Hindu philosophy. Etymology and meaning. Dhyana means contemplation, reflection, and profound, abstract meditation. The root of the word is dhi, which in the earliest layer of text of the Vedas refers to imaginative vision, and associated with goddess Saraswati with powers of knowledge, wisdom and poetic eloquence. This term developed into the variant dhya and dhyana, or meditation. Dhyana, states Thomas Berry, bullshits sustained attention and the application of mind to the chosen point of concentration. Dhyana is contemplating, reflecting on whatever dharana has focused on. If in the sixth limb of yoga one is concentrating on a personal deity, dhyana is its contemplation. If the concentration was on one object, dhyana is non-judgmental, non-presumptuous observation of that object. If the focus was on a concept, idea, dhyana is contemplating that concept, idea in all its aspects, forms and consequences. Dhyana is uninterrupted train of thought, current of cognition, flow of awareness. A related term is nididhyasana, the pondering over Upanishadic statements. It is a composite of three terms, namely dhya, upasana, and bhavana. Origins. The term dhyana is used in Jainism, Buddhism and Hinduism, with somewhat different meanings. The origins of the practice of dhyana, which culminates into samadhi, are a matter of dispute. According to Bronkhorst, a mainstream concept developed and is evidenced in Jaina and Hindu texts in pre-Buddhist period. Dhyana, states Jain, has been essential to Jaina religious practices, but the origins of dhyana and yoga in the pre-canonical era is unclear, and it likely developed in the Sramanic culture of ancient India. The earliest Jaina texts on dhyana, such as Sutakranga, Antaktadasama and Subhashita, mentioned Uddaka Ramaputta, who is said to be the teacher of some meditation methods to Buddha, as well as the originator of Vipassana and Pariksha meditation techniques. The Jaina tradition believes Rishabhanatha, the first Tirthankara, to have founded meditation, but there is no historical confirming evidence. The earliest mention of dhyana in the canonical Jaina texts simply mention dhyana as a means of emancipation, but in the ascetic practices are not emphasized, nor is the discussion as systematic as in later Jaina texts or Hindu texts such as the Patanjali's Yoga Sutras. There is no archaeological or literary evidence, states Jain, about the origins of systems for dhyana and yoga, and there is a great deal of similarities between Jaina, Buddhist, Ajivika, Samyama, yoga and other ancient Indian traditions. The earliest texts, such as Tattvartha Sutra, suggest that these ideas developed in parallel, sometimes with different terms for similar ideas in various Indian traditions, influencing each other. Buddhism introduced its own ideas, states Bronkhorst, such as the four dhyanas, which did not affect the mainstream meditation traditions in Jaina and Hindu traditions for a long time. All traditions, Jain Jainism, Buddhism and Hinduism introduced unique aspects and context to dhyana and mutually influenced each other. According to Bronkhorst, while Jaina and Hindu meditation traditions predate Buddhism, the Buddhist terminology such as Samadhi may have influenced the wording found in one of the several types of dhyana found in the Mahabharata as well as parts of Patanjali's Yoga Sutras. Alexander Wynne interprets Bronkhorst as stating that dhyana was a Jaina tradition, from which both Hinduism and Buddhism borrowed ideas on meditation. Wynne adds that Bronkhorst's opinion understates the role of meditation in early Brahmanical tradition. Dhyana was incorporated into Buddhism from Brahmanical practices, suggests Wynne, in the Nikayas ascribed to Alara Kalama and Uddaka Ramaputta. In early Brahmanical yoga, the goal of meditation was considered to be a non-dual state identical to an unmanifest state of Brahman, where subject-object duality had been dissolved. The early Buddhist practices adapted these old yogic methods, pairing it to mindfulness and attainment of insight. Kalupahana states that the Buddha reverted to the meditational practices he had learned from Alara Kalama and Uddaka Ramaputta. In Hinduism, state Jones and Ryan, the term first appears in the Upanishads. Techniques of concentration and meditation are a Vedic tradition, states Fritz Stahl, because these ideas are found in the early Upanishads as dhyana or abhidhyana. In most of the later Hindu yoga traditions, which derive from Patanjali's Raja Yoga, dhyana is a refined meditative practice, a deeper concentration of the mind, which is taken up after preceding exercises such as mastering pranayama and dharana. Discussion in Hindu texts, Vedas and Upanishads. The term dhyanam appears in Vedic literature, such as hymn 4.36.2 of the Rig Veda and verse 10.11.1 of the Taittiriya Aranyaka. The term, in the sense of meditation, appears in the Upanishads. The Kaushitaki Upanishad uses it in the context of mind and meditation in verses 3.2 to 3.6, for example as follows. The term appears in the context of contemplate, reflect, meditate in verses of chapters 1.3, 2.22, 5.1, 7.6, 7.7 and 7.26 of the Chandogya Upanishad, chapters 3.5, 4.5 and 4.6 of the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad and verses 6.9 to 6.24 of the Maitri Upanishad. The word dhyana refers to meditation in Chandogya Upanishad, while the Prashna Upanishad asserts that the meditation on a leads to the world of Brahman. The development of meditation in the Vedic era paralleled the ideas of interiorization, where social, external yajna fire rituals were replaced with meditative, internalized rituals. This interiorization of Vedic fire ritual into yogic meditation ideas from Hinduism, that are mentioned in the Samhita and Aranyaka layers of the Vedas and more clearly in chapter 5 of the Chandogya Upanishad, are also found in later Buddhist texts and esoteric variations such as the Dhyānika Mahavairakana Sutra and the Jyotirmanyari, wherein the Buddhist texts describe meditation as inner forms of fire oblation, sacrifice. This interiorization of fire rituals, where life is conceptualized as an unceasing sacrifice and emphasis is placed on meditation, occurs in the classic Vedic world. In the early Upanishads and other texts such as the Shrauta Sutras and verse 2.18 of Vedic Vaikhanasa Smrta Sutra. Beyond the early Upanishads composed before 5th century BCE, the term dhyana and the related terms such as jhana Adhyaya appears in numerous Upanishads composed after the 5th century BCE, such as Chapter 1 of Shvetashvatara Upanishad, Chapters 2 and 3 of Mundaka Upanishad, Chapter 3 of Aitareya Upanishad, Chapter 11 of Mahanarajana Upanishad, and in various verses of Kaivalya Upanishad, Chulika Upanishad, Atharvajika Upanishad, Brahma Upanishad, Brahma-Bindu Upanishad, Amrita-Bindu Upanishad, Tejobi-Bindu Upanishad, Paramahamsa Upanishad, Kaishuriki Upanishad, Dhyana-Bindu Upanishad, Atharvajra Upanishad, Maha Upanishad, Prananihotra Upanishad, Yogasika Upanishad, Yogatattva Upanishad, Kathathruti Upanishad, Hamsa Upanishad, Atmaprabodha Upanishad and Visudeva Upanishad. Brahma Sutras. The Brahma Sutras, which distills the teachings of the Upanishads and is one of 3 foundational texts of the Vedanta school of Hinduism, states that dhyana is not Vedic and meditation belongs to all Vedic schools. Adi Shankara dedicates an extensive chapter on meditation in his commentary on the Brahma Sutras in Sadhana as essential to spiritual practice. His discussion there is similar to his extensive commentary on dhyana in his Bhashya on Bhagavad Gita and the early Upanishads. Dharma Sutras. The verse 30.8 of the ancient Vasistha Dharma Sutra declares meditation as a virtue and interiorized substitute equivalent of a fire sacrifice. Bhagavad Gita. The term dhyana and related words with the meaning of meditation appears in many chapters of the Bhagavad Gita, such as in chapters 2, 12, 13 and 18. The chapter 6 of the Gita is titled as the Yoga of Meditation. The Bhagavad Gita, one of the 3 key books of Vedanta school of Hinduism, states 4 marga to purify one's mind and to reach the summit of spirituality: the path of unselfish work, the path of knowledge, the path of devotion and the path of meditation. Houston Smith summarizes the need and value of meditation in Gita as follows: to change the analogy, the mind is like a lake, and stones that are dropped into it raise waves. Those waves do not let us see who we are. The waters must be calmed. If one remains quiet, eventually the winds that ruffle the water will give up, and then one knows who one is. God is constantly within us, but the mind obscures that fact with agitated waves of worldly desires. Meditation quiets those waves. Meditation in the Bhagavad Gita is a means to one's spiritual journey, requiring 3 moral values: satya, ahimsa and aparigraha. Dhyana in this ancient Hindu text, states Houston Smith, can be about whatever the person wants or finds spiritual, ranging from the manifestation of divinity in a religious symbol in a human form, or an inspiration in nature such as a snow-covered mountain, a serene lake in moonlight, or a colorful horizon at sunrise or sunset, or melodic sounds or syllables such as those that are intoned as mantras and rhythmically repeated, like that is audibly or silent contemplated. On. The direction of deep meditation in the text is towards detaching the mind from sensory distractions and disturbances outside of oneself, submerging it instead on the indwelling spirit and one's soul towards the state of Samadhi, a state of bliss. The Gita presents a synthesis of the Brahmanical concept of Dharma with Bhakti, the yogic ideals of liberation through Jnana, and Samya philosophy. It is the locus classicus of the Hindu synthesis which emerged around the beginning of the Common Era, integrating Brahmanic and Shramanic ideas with theistic devotion. The Bhagavad Gita talks of 4 branches of yoga: Karma Yoga, the yoga of work in the world; Jnana Yoga, the yoga of knowledge and intellectual endeavor; Bhakti Yoga, the yoga of devotion; Dhyana Yoga, the yoga of meditation. The Jnana Yoga system is specifically described by Krishna in Chapter 6 of the Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna. The Yoga Sutras of Patanjali and the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, a key text of the Yoga school of Hindu philosophy. Dhyana is the seventh limb of this path, following Dharana and preceding Samadhi. Dhyana is integrally related to dharana, one leads to other. Dharana is a state of mind, dhyana the process of mind. Dhyana is distinct from dharana in that the meditator becomes actively engaged with its focus. Patanjali defines contemplation as the mind process, where the mind is fixed on something, and then there is a course of uniform modification of knowledge. Bronkhorst states that Buddhist influences are noticeable in the first chapter of the Yoga Sutras, and confirmed by Sutra 1.20 because it mentions a samprajñata samadhi is preceded by trust, energy, mindfulness, concentration, and insight. According to Bronkhorst, the definition of yoga given in the first chapter of the Yoga Sutra does not fit the descriptions contained in the same chapter, and this may suggest the sutra incorporated Buddhist elements as described in the four jhanas. Wynne, in contrast to Bronkhorst's theory, states that the evidence in early Buddhist texts, such as those found in Sutta Pitaka, suggests that these foundational ideas on formless meditation and element meditation were borrowed from pre-Buddha Brahmanical sources attested in early Upanishads and ultimately the cosmological theory found in the Nasadiya Sukta of the Rig Veda. Adi Shankara, in his commentary on Yoga Sutras, distinguishes jhana from dharana, by explaining jhana as the yoga state when there is only the stream of continuous thought about the object, uninterrupted by other thoughts of different kind for the same object. Dharana, states Shankara, is focused on one object, but aware of its many aspects and ideas about the same object. Shankara gives the example of a yogin in a state of dharana on morning sun may be aware of its brilliance, color and orbit. The yogin in dharana state contemplates on sun's orbit alone, for example, without being interrupted by its color, brilliance or other related ideas. In Patanjali's Raja Yoga, also called meditation yoga, dhyana is a refined meditative practice, a deeper concentration of the mind, which is taken up after preceding exercises. In Hinduism, dhyana is considered to be an instrument to gain self-knowledge. It is a part of a self-directed awareness and unifying yoga process by which a world that by default is experienced as disjointed, comes to be experienced as self and an integrated oneness with Brahman. The Brahman has been variously defined in Hinduism, ranging from non-theistic non-dualistic ultimate reality, a supreme soul, to theistic dualistic God. Dharana, the stage of meditation preceding dhyana, is called dharana. Dharana, which means holding on, is the focusing and holding one's awareness to one object for a long period of time. In Yoga Sutras, the term implies fixing one's mind on an object of meditation, which could be one's breath or the tip of one's nose or the image of one's personal deity or anything of the yogi's choice. In the Jangama Dhyana technique, for example, the meditator concentrates the mind to a spot between the eyebrows. According to Patanjali, this is one method of achieving the initial concentration necessary for the mind to become introverted in meditation. In deeper practice of the technique, the mind concentrated between the eyebrows begins to automatically lose all location and focus on the watching itself. This step prepares one to begin the practice of dhyana. Dhyana, the Yoga Sutras in verse 3.2 and elsewhere, states Edwin Bryant, defines dhyana as the continuous flow of the same thought or image of the object of meditation, without being distracted by any other thought. Vivekananda explains dhyana in Patanjali's Yoga Sutras as when the mind has been trained to remain fixed fixed on a certain internal or external location. There comes to it the power of flowing in an unbroken current, as it were, towards that point. This state is called dhyana, while dharana was the stage in yoga where the yogi held one's awareness to one object for a long period of time. Dhyana is concentrated meditation where he or she contemplates without interruption the object of meditation, beyond any memory of ego or anything else. In dhyana, the meditator is not conscious of the act of meditation but is only aware that he/she exists, his mind and the object of meditation. Dhyana is distinct from dharana, in that the yogi contemplates on the object of meditation and the object's aspects only, free from distractions, with his mind during dhyana. With practice, the process of dhyana awakens self-awareness, the fundamental level of existence and ultimate reality in Hinduism, the non-afflicted, conflictless and blissful state of freedom and liberation. Samadhi, the dhyana step, prepares a yogi to proceed towards practicing samadhi. Swami Vivekananda describes the teachings of Yoga Sutras in the following way. When one has so intensified the power of dhyana as to be able to reject the external part of perception and remain meditating only on the internal part, the meaning, that state is called samadhi. Michael Washburn states that the Yoga Sutras text identifies stepwise stages for meditative practice progress, and that Patanjali distinguishes between dharana, which is effortful focusing of attention, dhyana, which is easy continuous one-pointedness, and samadhi, which is absorption, ecstasy, contemplation. A person who begins meditation practice usually practices dharana. With practice he is able to gain ease in which he learns how to contemplate in a sharply focused fashion, and then he is able more and more easily to give uninterrupted attention to the meditation object. That is to say, he attains dharana. With further practice, the yogi ceases being detachedly vigilant and enters a state of fusion with the meditation object, which is samadhi. Samadhi is oneness with the object of meditation. There is no distinction between active meditation and the object of meditation. Samadhi is of two kinds, with and without support or an object of meditation. Samprajñāta samadhi, also called Savakalpa samadhi and Sabbiya samadhi, is object-centered, and is associated with deliberation, reflection, blissful ecstasy that has been assisted by an object or anchor point. The first two, deliberation and reflection, form the basis of the various types of samapatti, savitaka, deliberative. The citta is concentrated upon a gross object of meditation, and the yogis deliberates and fuses with it, becoming unaware of everything else. Conceptualization here is in the form of perception and the knowledge of the object of meditation. When the deliberation is ended, this is called nirvitaka samadhi. Savachara, reflective. The citta is concentrated upon an abstract object of meditation, which is not perceptible to the senses but arrived at through inference. The object of meditation can be inferred from the senses, the process of cognition, the mind, the I-am-ness, or the buddhi. The stilling of reflection is called nirvichara samapatti. Asamprajñāta samadhi, also called nirvikalpa samadhi and nirbhya samadhi, the state achieved when the meditation is without the help of a support or an object. Both object-centered and objectless-centered meditative practice, in Hindu texts, leads to progressively more bright, pellucid and poised state of powerful, pure, sattvic state of blissful self, ultimately leading to the knowledge of Purusha or Atman Brahman, states Michael Washburn. This is the state, in Hindu tradition, where states Gregor Mealy, the yogi or yogini realizes the Atman in continues the Atman in everyone, and leading to the realization of self. Samyama, the practice of dharana, dhyana and samadhi together, is designated as Samyama in the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. Samyama, asserts the text, is a powerful meditative tool and can be applied to a certain object, or entire class of objects. A yogi who does Samyama on pratyaya of men, states Sutra 3.19 of the text, knows the series of psychomental states of other men. A yogi, after successfully completing Samyama on distinction of object and idea, realizes the cries of all creatures, states Sutra 3.17. A Samyama on friendliness, compassion and joy leads to these powers emerging within the yogi, states Sutra 3.23. The meditation technique discussed in the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali is thus, states Misha Eliade, a means to knowledge and siddhi. Vachaspati Misra, a scholar of the Vedanta school of Hinduism, in his Bhashya on the Yoga Sutras 3.30 wrote, whatever the yogin desires to know, he should perform Samyama in respect to that object. Moksha is one such practice, where the object of Samyama is Sattva Atman and Purusha Abhigavan. Adi Shankara, another scholar of the Vedanta school of Hinduism, extensively commented on Samyama as a means for Jnana yoga to achieve the state of Jivanmukta Samapatti. By the time the Yoga Sutras were compiled, the Hindu traditions had two broad forms of meditation, namely the ecstatic and instatic types. Comparison of dhyana in Hinduism, Buddhism and Jainism. Buddhism, according to Jiangxin Li, Samprajñāta Samadhi of Hinduism may be compared to the Rupa jhanas of Buddhism. This interpretation may conflict with Gumbrakan Win, according to whom the first and second jhana represent concentration, whereas the third and fourth jhana combine concentration with mindfulness. According to Eddie Krangle, the first jhana resembles Patanjali's Samprajñāta Samadhi, which both share the application of Vitakka and Vicara. A Samprajñāta Samadhi, states Jiangxin Li, may be compared to the Arupa jhanas of Buddhism and to Nirada Samapatti. Krangle and other scholars state that Sabira Samprajñāta Samadhi resembles the four formless jhanas, with the fourth Arupa jhana of Buddhism being analogous to Patanjali's objectless jhana and Samadhi. The paths to be followed in order to attain enlightenment are remarkably uniform among all the Indian systems. Each requires a foundation of moral purification leading eventually to similar meditation practices. According to Sarbaga and other scholars, while there are parallels between dhyana in Hinduism and in Buddhism, the phenomenological states and the emancipation experiences are described differently. Dhyana in Buddhism is aiming towards cessation and realization of shunya, while dhyana Hinduism is aiming towards realization of Atman and consequent union with Brahman. Nirvana, the desired end through dhyana in Buddhism, is the realization that there is no permanent self nor permanent consciousness, while moksha, the desired end through dhyana in Buddhism, is acceptance of self-realization of liberating knowledge, the consciousness of oneness with all existence and understanding the whole universe as the self. Nirvana of Buddhism starts with the premise that self is merely an illusion, there is no self. Moksha of Hinduism, on the other hand, starts with the premise that everything is the self, states David Loy. The soteriological emphasis in dhyana, therefore, is different in Buddhism and Hinduism. Jainism. Ancient Jaina scholars developed their own theories on dhyana like other Indian religions, but little detail is mentioned in Jaina texts, and the dhyana practice is varied by sects within the Jaina tradition. Broadly, Jainism texts identify 4 types of meditation based on the nature of object. Dhyana states Jaina meditation literature occurs when one's focus is on anguish and unpleasant things. Originated occurs when the focus is on anger or perverse ideas or objects. Dhyana focuses on religious ideas or virtuous objects, while Dhyana is the focus on pure ideas or bright objects. This classification of 4 dhyana types may have roots, suggests Paul Dundas, in the earlier Hindu texts related to Kashmir Shaivism. Dundas states that Jaina tradition emphasized dhyana, but its meditation-related literature likely went through 2 stages of formulation. The early stage independent of other Indian traditions, one which concerned itself with cessation of mind and physical activities, rather than the transformation as in other Indian traditions, followed by a later stage, likely post-Yoga Sutras, where Jaina scholars of different sects restructured the contemplative model to assimilate elements of Hindu and Buddhist techniques on dhyana. The terminology used in some Jainism texts, however, states John Court, a different. The premise of Atman exists, that is found in Hinduism, is also present in Jainism. The soteriological goals of Jaina spiritual meditation are similar to Hindu spiritual meditation, aimed at experiential contact with the ultimate self, wherein the yogi realizes the blissful, unfettered, formless soul and siddhahood, a totally liberated state of being.